Millionaire left his safe open to test a poor little girl, but her request changed everything. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Stories of hope like this deserve to be shared, so make sure to subscribe to the channel. The November rain pelted against the 42nd floor windows of Sterling Industries as Marcus Sterling reviewed quarterly reports that would determine the fate of thousands of employees across 3 continents. At 37, he had built an empire worth billions, transforming a small Ohio startup into a global powerhouse that dominated the tech industry. But tonight, something felt profoundly different about his success. His corner office, overlooking downtown Manhattan's glittering lights, was a monument to relentless achievement. Awards from prestigious business magazines lined mahogany shelves that stretched from floor to ceiling, and his massive oak desk, handcrafted by Italian artisans, commanded respect from every visitor who entered his domain. Behind him, concealed within a bookshelf that cost more than most people's annual salaries, sat his private safe. Tonight, unusually and dangerously, it stood wide open. Marcus had been transferring funds for a major acquisition that would cement his company's position as industry leader when his assistant Janet interrupted with an urgent call from Tokyo investors. In his haste to address their concerns about market volatility, he'd left the steel door ajar, revealing neat stacks of crisp $100 bills arranged like green monuments to capitalism. $100 million sat exposed, enough money to change thousands of lives, end poverty in small towns, or fund entire charitable organizations for decades. The building was nearly empty at this late hour. Security guards patrolled the lower floors with their usual efficiency, but the executive level remained eerily quiet except for the steady drumming of rain against reinforced windows and the distant hum of air conditioning systems that never stopped running. Marcus returned to his documents, his mind calculating profit margins and market projections, completely unaware that his carefully ordered life was about to intersect with someone who would challenge everything he believed about wealth, innocence, power, and the true meaning of desperate need. A soft, scratching sound came from his office door, so faint he almost missed it over the ambient building noise. He looked up from his spreadsheets, expecting to see his night cleaning crew making their rounds, but the hallway appeared empty through his glass walls. The scratching continued, persistent, almost desperate, like a small animal trying to claw its way to safety. Marcus frowned, his businessman's instincts immediately alert to anything unusual in his controlled environment. When he opened the heavy door, his breath caught in his throat like a physical blow. There, in the hallway's soft LED lighting, stood a little girl with tangled blonde hair that looked like it hadn't seen proper care in months. Her clothes had clearly seen too many nights on cold streets. An oversized coat that swallowed her tiny frame, shoes with holes that let in both rain and hope, and a thin dress that offered no protection against November's bitter cold. But it was her eyes that stopped him completely. Blue as summer skies, and despite their obvious hunger and bone-deep exhaustion, they held a light that pierced straight through his businessman's armor, reaching something in his soul he'd forgotten existed. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, and she was completely alone in one of Manhattan's most secure buildings. How had she gotten past the sophisticated security systems? How had she reached the 42nd floor without triggering any alarms? But those questions faded into irrelevance as he noticed her trembling hands and the way she hugged herself against the cold that seemed to emanate from her very bones. "Sir?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain outside, carrying the weight of desperation mixed with carefully maintained dignity. "I'm sorry to bother you, and I know you're probably very busy with important work, but I was wondering." She paused, gathering courage that seemed impossible for someone so small and vulnerable, someone who had clearly been failed by every adult system designed to protect her. "I was wondering if you might have some food. I haven't eaten in 3 days, and I'm getting very weak." Marcus stared at this tiny intruder who had somehow penetrated his fortress of wealth and success, this small guardian angel disguised as a homeless child. In that moment, surrounded by luxury that most people could only dream of achieving in their lifetimes, he realized he was looking at something far more valuable than anything money could buy. Pure, innocent hope in its most desperate hour, standing before him like a test from the universe itself. "How did you get in here, sweetheart?" Marcus asked gently, crouching down to meet the little girl at eye level, his expensive suit wrinkling against the polished marble floor. Up close, he could see the dirt smudged on her pale cheeks, the way her oversized coat hung like a protective tent around her tiny frame, and the dark circles under her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights spent wondering where the next meal might come from. "The loading dock on 38th Street, she whispered, not meeting his eyes, her voice carrying the careful precision of someone who had learned to plan every move for survival. "The man with the food delivery cart. He didn't see me slip in behind him when the big doors opened. I've been hiding in the emergency stairwell for hours, waiting for everyone to go home. I didn't want to scare anyone or get in trouble for being here." Marcus felt his heart constrict with a pain he hadn't experienced since his own childhood struggles. This child had been planning, strategizing, surviving entirely on her own, with the kind of intelligence and resourcefulness that his business school professors would have admired. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Oh, Hope," she said, finally looking up at him with those impossibly blue eyes that seemed to hold depths of wisdom no 7-year-old should possess. "Hope Matthews. I know it's probably a funny name for someone like me, someone who doesn't have anything, but my mama always said hope was the most important thing anyone could have, especially when everything else was taken away." "Your mama was very wise, Hope. Where is she now?" Marcus asked, though he suspected the answer would break his heart. The little girl's eyes filled with tears that she quickly wiped away with a dirty sleeve, trying to maintain the dignity that seemed to be her last remaining possession. "She's with the angels now. The doctors at Mount Sinai tried real hard, but her heart was too tired from working so many jobs to take care of us. That was 8 months ago, on March 15th. I remember because it was the day after my birthday." Marcus's chest tightened with emotion. 8 months. This brave child had been navigating an adult world alone for 8 months, facing dangers and hardships that would break grown men. "And you've been living on the streets since then, Hope?" Hope nodded solemnly, her small chin trembling slightly. "At first, I stayed with Mrs. Peterson from our old apartment building on the Lower East Side, but she got sick too and had to go live with her daughter in Florida. I tried the shelters. There's one on Delancey Street and another near the Brooklyn Bridge, but they're always full, and some of the people there." She trailed off, but Marcus understood perfectly what a 7-year-old girl might face in overcrowded shelters filled with adults struggling with their own demons. "Hope, I want to help you. Come inside my office where it's warm and dry." As they walked into his office, Hope's eyes widened at the luxury surrounding her. Persian rugs that cost more than most cars covered polished hardwood floors. Crystal decanters caught and refracted the city lights like trapped rainbows, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that real estate agents called priceless. But it was what she saw behind him that made her gasp audibly, her small hand flying to her mouth in shock. The safe stood open like a treasure chest from the fairy tales her mother used to read to her. Stacks of money rose like small green mountains, more cash than Hope had ever imagined existed in one place, more money than she could count, even if she used all her fingers and toes 100 times. She stopped walking, her small body frozen in place. Marcus followed her gaze and realized his profound mistake. Here was a child who hadn't eaten in days, staring at enough money to solve every problem she'd ever faced and transform her from homeless orphan to millionaire in a single moment. He waited, watching her reaction with growing curiosity and something approaching awe, wondering what this remarkable child would do when faced with temptation that would challenge most adults. Hope stared at the money for a long, silent moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, then looked back at Marcus with those impossibly blue eyes that seemed to peer directly into his soul. When she spoke, her words would haunt him for the rest of his life and change his understanding of what it truly meant to be wealthy. "Mister, and I know this might sound crazy, and I don't want to be rude or presumptuous, but could you maybe lend me just $1? I promise on my mama's memory that I'll pay you back somehow, someday, even if it takes me years. I just need enough to buy something small to eat, maybe a piece of bread or an apple from the corner store. I don't need anything fancy or expensive." Marcus Sterling had been asked for many things throughout his illustrious career that had taken him from poverty in Ohio to penthouse offices in Manhattan. Desperate investors had begged for millions to save failing companies. Ambitious politicians had sought substantial donations to fund their campaigns, and prestigious charities had requested contributions that would ensure his name appeared on marble plaques for generations. But never in his 37 years of life had anyone asked him for just $1 while standing 3 feet away from $100 million in cash. The silence stretched between them, like a bridge across 2 different worlds, as Hope waited patiently for his answer, her small hands clasped together in front of her worn dress that had once been white, but now carried the stains of street life and survival. She had absolutely no idea that she could have taken enough money to live comfortably for multiple lifetimes, enough to buy mansions and luxury cars and anything her heart desired. Her innocence was so pure, so untouched by greed or entitlement, that it almost hurt to witness. "Hope," Marcus said softly, his voice thick with emotion he couldn't quite name or understand. "Do you see all that money behind me in the safe?" She nodded slowly, her eyes wide with the kind of wonder a child might show at a museum exhibit. "Yes, sir. You must be very, very rich. My mama always said that rich people worked very hard for their money, sometimes sacrificing time with their families and their own happiness, and we should always respect that kind of dedication and never judge them for having what we don't have. You could take some of it," he said carefully, studying her reaction with the intensity of a scientist observing a rare phenomenon. "I'm not saying you should, but you could take enough to solve all your problems forever. You could take $1,000, 10,000, even 100,000, and I probably wouldn't even notice it was gone from my accounts." Hope's expression showed genuine confusion, as if he had suggested she could fly to the moon by flapping her arms. "But sir, that would be stealing, and stealing is wrong no matter what. Mama taught me that taking what doesn't belong to you is one of the worst things a person can do, no matter how hungry or cold or desperate you are. She said our integrity was worth more than all the money in the world, and that once you lose your integrity, you lose yourself." Marcus felt something fundamental crack open inside his chest, like ice breaking apart in spring. He thought of his own childhood, growing up in a modest 2-bedroom house in Akron, Ohio, where his mother Sarah worked double shifts at Murphy's Diner to keep food on the table and the electricity turned on. She had taught him similar lessons about honesty and hard work, about treating people with dignity, regardless of their circumstances. But somewhere along the way, climbing the corporate ladder, one ruthless deal at a time, he had forgotten those simple truths that once defined his character. "Your mama sounds like she was a very special woman, Hope." "Do She was the best mama in the whole world, Hope replied, her voice suddenly full of love that transcended her current circumstances. She used to read me stories every single night, even when she was so tired from cleaning offices all day that she could barely keep her eyes open. She would do different voices for all the characters, and she made even sad stories feel magical. She said that no matter how hard things got, as long as we had each other and our good hearts, we'd always be rich in the ways that really mattered. Marcus turned to close the safe, but not before removing a crisp $100 bill that felt strangely heavy in his hands. When he turned back to Hope, he saw her watching him with curious, trusting eyes that held no expectation of charity or pity. "I think," he said, kneeling down again to her level so they could speak as equals, "that your mama raised a very special little girl, and I think she would want someone to help take care of you now, to make sure you have everything you need to grow up safe and happy." "I don't need charity, sir," Hope said with a dignity that seemed impossible for someone so young and vulnerable. "I just need a chance to earn my way in the world. Maybe I could clean your office or organize your papers. I'm a very good worker. Mama taught me how to clean properly and how to be responsible with other people's things." In that moment, Marcus realized he wasn't just looking at a homeless child in need of rescue. He was looking at a mirror of everything he had once been and everything he had somehow lost along the way to becoming successful. This little girl was showing him what true wealth looked like, and it had nothing to do with bank accounts or stock portfolios. "When did you last have a real meal, Hope?" Marcus asked, walking to his office's fully equipped kitchen area to put on a pot of coffee and search desperately for anything a hungry child might eat. The kitchen was stocked primarily for entertaining wealthy clients and investors, not feeding homeless 7-year-olds. Real meal? Hope considered this question with the seriousness of a philosopher contemplating the meaning of existence. Like with vegetables and meat and maybe some bread with butter. And sitting at an actual table, instead of eating out of dumpsters or from paper bags on the sidewalk. I think it was about a week ago, maybe 8 days. A nice lady at the soup kitchen on Houston Street gave me extra portions before they ran out of food, and she let me sit inside where it was warm. Marcus opened his stainless steel mini refrigerator, finding only energy drinks that could probably power a small aircraft, leftover Chinese takeout that was questionably edible and certainly too spicy for a child, and a bottle of champagne that cost more than most people spent on groceries in a month. "Hope, I want you to sit in that comfortable chair while I order us some proper food. What kinds of things do you like to eat? What were your favorites when your mama was alive?" Hope's eyes lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve, transforming her entire face from that of a weary street survivor into the 7-year-old child she actually was. "Oh, I'm not picky at all, sir. Anything warm would be wonderful. I've forgotten what warm food tastes like. Maybe some soup or a sandwich? I used to love grilled cheese sandwiches more than anything in the world. Mama made them with real butter that sizzled in the pan and served them with tomato soup from the can with the red and white label." As Marcus dialed the number for his favorite upscale restaurant, explaining to a confused maitre d' that he needed child-friendly food delivered immediately to his office, he watched Hope settle carefully into his $1,000 leather chair. She moved as if afraid she might damage something expensive, pulling her thin coat tighter around herself and looking around his office with the wonder of someone visiting a palace. "Sir," she said, after he finished ordering enough food to feed a small family, "can I ask you something that might be too personal?" "Of course, Hope." "And please call me Marcus." "Marcus," she said, testing the name carefully, "why are you being so nice to me? Most people cross the street when they see me coming like being homeless is contagious or something. Some people look at me like I'm not even a real person, just part of the scenery they wish would disappear." Marcus set down his phone and really looked at this remarkable child who had somehow wandered into his life like a messenger from another world. "Hope, can I tell you a secret?" Something I don't talk about very often because it doesn't fit with my image as a successful businessman? Hope nodded eagerly, leaning forward with the intense attention children reserve for adult secrets. When I was not much older than you, I was 9 years old. My family lost our house because my father left us and stopped paying the mortgage. We had to live in our car for 3 months while my mother looked for work and tried to save enough money for a security deposit on an apartment. Hope's eyes widened with recognition and understanding. Really? You were homeless too? You know what it's like to be cold and hungry and scared? We were. And I remember exactly how it felt when people looked right through us, like we weren't even human beings worthy of basic acknowledgement. I remember the shame that burned in my chest when other kids at school found out where I was living. I remember the hunger that made my stomach feel like it was eating itself, and the cold nights when our car wouldn't start and we had no heat. But I also remember the few people who showed us kindness. They saved our lives in ways they probably never realized. What happened? How did you go from living in a car to having all this? Hope gestured around the luxurious office that represented everything money could buy. Marcus settled into the chair across from her, for the first time in years speaking about his past without calculating how it might affect his business image. My mother eventually got a job as a night janitor for a small manufacturing company. She worked incredibly hard, staying late to learn about different parts of the business, asking questions, making suggestions. The owner noticed her dedication and intelligence. He gave her opportunities to learn about accounting, then operations, then management. Eventually, she became the operations director of the entire company. "Your mama sounds like she was special too," Hope said softly. "She was extraordinary. And you know what she used to tell me? She said that sometimes angels come disguised as people who need our help. She said that helping them was really them helping us become the people we were meant to be." Hope smiled, the first real, genuine smile Marcus had seen from her, transforming her face completely. "My mama said something almost exactly like that. She said that when we help each other, we create little miracles that spread out into the world like ripples in a pond." The food arrived 30 minutes later, carried up by a very confused security guard named Rodriguez, who clearly had numerous questions about why Marcus Sterling had a homeless child in his office at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Marcus signed for the delivery, with a tip large enough to pay the guard's monthly car payment, then set out the meal like he was arranging a feast for royalty. Tomato soup that steamed invitingly in ceramic bowls, grilled cheese sandwiches cut into perfect triangles, chocolate milk in glass bottles, and fresh fruit that looked like it had been painted by artists. Watching Hope eat with careful, grateful bites, trying to make each spoonful last as long as possible, Marcus realized something profound was happening inside his chest. This wasn't just charity or even kindness. This was transformation, for both of them. Every bite she took seemed to heal something broken inside him, something he hadn't even realized was damaged. "Hope," he said, as she finished her second grilled cheese sandwich, "I need to make some phone calls, important ones, but first I want to ask you something, and I need you to think very carefully before you answer." She looked up at him with those impossibly blue eyes, a small mustache of chocolate milk on her upper lip. "Okay, how would you feel about staying with me, not just for tonight, but for a long time, maybe forever? I'd like to become your guardian, and eventually, if you wanted that, I'd like to adopt you and become your family." Hope set down her spoon very carefully, as if the weight of his words required her complete attention. "You want to adopt me? But why? You don't really know me. What if I turn out to be difficult or ungrateful or not smart enough for someone like you?" "Oh, Hope Matthews," Marcus said, leaning forward so she could see the sincerity in his eyes. "In the span of one evening, you've shown me more about courage, integrity, and grace than I've seen in 37 years of business dealings with supposedly sophisticated adults. You've reminded me what it means to be human." But I don't have anything to give you back. I don't have money or fancy clothes or special talents. I'm just a homeless girl who hasn't had a bath in a week. Hope, you've already given me more than you could possibly imagine. You've given me purpose. You've reminded me what's truly important in life. You've shown me what real courage looks like when you asked for $1 instead of taking millions. And you've given me a chance to honor my mother's memory by helping someone the way strangers once helped us. Hope was quiet for a long moment, processing this enormous possibility that was bigger than anything she had dared to dream. Would I have my own room, with a real bed and maybe some books? You'd have the most beautiful room we could create together, with more books than you could read in a lifetime, and art supplies and toys and anything else that would make you happy. And could I go to school with other kids my age? You'd go to the best school in the city, with supplies and backpacks and everything you need to learn and grow and become whoever you want to be. And you wouldn't get tired of me. You wouldn't decide I'm too much trouble and send me away like some foster families do. Marcus felt tears sting his eyes, tears he hadn't shed since his mother's funeral 5 years earlier. Hope Matthews, if you let me be your family, I promise you that you'll never be alone again. Not ever. You'll never have to sleep in stairwells or go hungry or wonder where you belong. You'll always have a home with me. Before Hope could respond, there was a firm knock at the office door. Through the glass walls, Marcus could see Detective Sarah Richardson, with 2 women in professional clothing, clearly social workers who looked serious and skeptical about this unusual midnight situation. "Are you ready for this? Ready for—" Marcus asked Hope, reaching out to squeeze her small hand. She straightened her small shoulders with remarkable dignity, the same courage that had carried her through 8 months of survival on brutal streets. "If you really want me, then yes. But Marcus, what if they find out something about my mama or me that changes your mind? What if there are things about our past that make you not want me anymore?" Marcus took her small hand in both of his, feeling the calluses from months of hardship. "Hope, there is nothing, absolutely nothing, that could change my mind about wanting you in my life. Whatever they discover about your past, whatever secrets or problems or complications arise, we'll face them together." Dean, but as the social workers entered his office with their clipboards and skeptical expressions, Marcus had no idea that they were about to uncover a connection between his life and Hope's that would shake him to his very core. A revelation that would explain not just how she'd found him, but why their meeting felt like destiny itself had been pulling invisible strings. The truth about Hope's mother was about to change everything they thought they knew about coincidence, fate, and the mysterious ways the universe sometimes corrects old wrongs. Detective Sarah Richardson entered the office with the confident stride of someone who had seen every possible variation of human drama during her 20-year career with the NYPD. Behind her came Dr. Jennifer Walsh from Child Protective Services, a woman whose sharp eyes missed nothing and whose job was to protect children from well-meaning but unprepared adults, and Ms. Patricia Hernandez, a family services coordinator whose expression suggested she had serious doubts about this entire midnight situation. "Marcus," Sarah said, her voice carefully professional despite their decade-old friendship, "this is highly irregular. When you called about wanting to help a homeless child, I expected we'd be arranging temporary shelter placement, not discussing impromptu adoption by a man with no child-rearing experience." Hope instinctively moved closer to Marcus, her small hand finding his arm with the trust of someone who had learned to recognize genuine kindness. Dr. Walsh noticed this immediately and made a note on her clipboard. "Hello, Hope," Dr. Walsh said, kneeling down to the child's eye level with practiced gentleness. "I'm Dr. Walsh, and I work with children to make sure they're safe and happy. Can you tell me how you met Mr. Sterling?" Hope looked at Marcus for reassurance, then back at Dr. Walsh. "I was very hungry, and I saw his light was still on. So I knocked on his door to ask if he could lend me $1 for food. He was very kind and gave me dinner instead. Ms. Hernandez raised an eyebrow. You broke into this building to ask for money. I didn't break in, Hope said with quiet dignity. I snuck in behind a delivery man, but I didn't break anything or take anything that wasn't offered to me. Dr. Walsh continued her gentle questioning. Hope, can you tell me about your mother? When did she pass away? And where have you been living since then? Mama died on March 15th at Mount Sinai Hospital. Her heart was too tired from working so hard to take care of us. I stayed with Mrs. Peterson for a while, but she got sick and had to move to Florida. I've been staying in different places since then, shelters when they have space, doorways when they don't. What was your mother's full name? Ms. Hernandez asked, pen poised over her forms. Rachel Elizabeth Matthews. She was 28 when she died. She worked cleaning offices at night and took care of old people during the day. Doctor. Walsh and Ms. Hernandez exchanged a look that Marcus couldn't interpret. Hope, do you know which cleaning company your mother worked for? Hope thought carefully. It was something with Sterling in the name. She always said she worked for a very important building with nice people. The blood drained from Marcus's face as if someone had opened a valve. What did you say? Sterling something, Hope repeated. Why? Is that important? Sarah noticed Marcus's expression immediately. Marcus, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Marcus's hands were trembling as he reached for his desk phone, dialing his head of security. Rodriguez, I need you to check the employee records for our night cleaning service. I need to know if we ever employed a Rachel Matthews. He paused, looking at Hope with growing amazement. She would have worked here approximately 8 to 10 months ago. The silence in the room was deafening as they waited. Hope looked confused by the sudden tension, while the social workers watched Marcus with professional concern about his emotional stability. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the speakerphone 5 minutes later. Mr. Sterling, I found the records. Rachel Matthews worked for citywide cleaning services from January 2022 until March 2024. She cleaned the executive floors, including your office, Monday through Friday nights. According to her supervisor, she was an excellent employee, reliable, trustworthy, never missed a day until she got sick. Hope's eyes widened with recognition and joy. That's my mama. She always talked about how beautiful your office was, how the windows showed the whole city like a fairy tale kingdom. She said the man who worked there must be very important because he stayed late every night and had pictures of his family on his desk. Marcus felt the room spinning around him. For over 2 years, while he worked late into the night building his empire, a woman named Rachel Matthews had quietly cleaned his office, probably observing his life through the evidence scattered across his desk, contracts, photographs, personal documents. She had been invisible to him, just another service worker whose presence he barely acknowledged. Dr. Walsh, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, I think I understand now why Hope found me. Her mother knew about my life, knew my schedule, knew I worked late. Hope didn't just randomly choose this building or this office. Some part of her remembered her mother's stories about the kind man in the beautiful office who worked so hard he forgot to go home. Hope looked at Marcus with wonder. You knew my mama? She cleaned your office? I'm ashamed to say I never really knew her, Hope. But she took care of my space for over 2 years, and now I understand that she was preparing the way for me to take care of you. Dr. Walsh closed her notebook with a decisive snap. This changes things significantly. We'll need to do a full background check and home study, but this connection, it's extraordinary. It's like she led you here, Hope. As the social workers began discussing temporary placement procedures and Marcus started making calls to expedite the legal process, Hope tugged on his sleeve. Marcus, she whispered, do you think Mama somehow knew this would happen? Do you think she sent me to you? Looking down at this remarkable child who had found her way through 8 months of hardship directly to the one person whose life her mother had touched every day, Marcus realized that some mysteries were more beautiful than their explanations. "I think, Hope, that your mama loved you enough to make sure you'd find your way home, even after she couldn't be there to guide you herself." The real journey was just beginning. But for the first time in 8 months, Hope Matthews was no longer alone in the world. And for the first time in years, Marcus Sterling remembered what it meant to be truly wealthy, not in money, but in love, purpose, and the miraculous second chances that sometimes disguise themselves as 7-year-old angels asking for just $1. The next morning brought a whirlwind of legal procedures, background checks, and emergency custody arrangements that would have overwhelmed most people. But Marcus Sterling had built his empire by turning impossible situations into successful outcomes. By 10 a.m., he had assembled a team of family law attorneys that rivaled the legal departments of major corporations, each one working to expedite Hope's placement in his temporary custody while the formal adoption process began. Hope sat quietly in the conference room of Marcus's law firm, her small legs swinging from a leather chair that cost more than most families spent on furniture. She wore new clothes that Marcus had purchased during an early morning shopping trip. A soft blue dress that matched her eyes, comfortable shoes that actually fit her feet, and a warm coat that would protect her from November's bitter cold. But more than the material changes, there was something different in her posture, in the way she held her head up with cautious hope. "The good news," explained Margaret Chen, Marcus's lead family attorney, "is that Hope has no living relatives who might contest the adoption. Her mother was an only child, and her father never established paternity or participated in her life. The state has no objections to emergency placement with Mr. Sterling, especially given the unique circumstances of their connection." Dr. Walsh had spent 2 hours interviewing Hope privately, assessing her emotional state and ensuring she truly wanted this arrangement rather than simply feeling grateful to Marcus for his kindness. "Hope is remarkably resilient," she reported to the assembled legal team. "She understands what adoption means, and she's genuinely excited about the possibility of having a permanent family. However, she's also been traumatized by loss and abandonment, so we'll need to proceed carefully with counseling and support services." Marcus looked across the table at Hope, who was coloring in a book one of the attorneys had provided. "What kind of support services?" "Trauma counseling, educational assessment to see where she stands academically after months out of school, medical and dental care. She'll need a complete health evaluation. And family counseling for both of you as you learn to be a family together." "Whatever she needs," Marcus said without hesitation. "Money is not a factor here." Patricia Hernandez from Child Services looked up from her paperwork. "Mr. Sterling, I need to be clear about something. Adoption isn't like acquiring a company. You can't solve every problem with financial resources. This child needs stability, emotional availability, and consistent care. Are you prepared to restructure your life significantly?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus thought about his 18-hour workdays, his constant travel schedule, his meticulously organized life that had no room for scraped knees, bedtime stories, or school plays. "Yes," he said firmly, "I'm prepared to restructure everything." Hope looked up from her coloring book, having heard his declaration. "Marcus, you don't have to change your whole life for me. I'm very independent. I can take care of myself while you work." The innocence of her statement broke something open in Marcus's chest. This 7-year-old was still trying to make herself small, undemanding, invisible, the survival skills that had kept her alive on the streets. "Hope," he said gently, "you're not supposed to take care of yourself anymore. That's my job now, and it's not a burden or an obligation. It's a privilege. You deserve to be someone's whole world." Margaret Chen smiled as she prepared the temporary custody papers. "We should have everything finalized within 6 weeks, assuming no complications arise. In the meantime, Hope will live with you under court supervision, with regular check-ins from social services." As they left the law office that afternoon, Hope slipped her small hand into Marcus's larger one. "Are you scared?" She asked as they walked toward his car. "Terrified," Marcus admitted. "Are you?" "Yes," Hope said. "But Mama always said that scared and excited feel exactly the same in your body. Maybe we're just excited and don't know it yet." That evening, as Marcus showed Hope through his penthouse apartment, her first real home in 8 months, he realized that his perfectly organized life was about to become beautifully chaotic. And for the first time in years, he couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring. But neither of them knew that Rachel Matthews had left behind more than just memories. Hidden in a storage unit across town was a collection of items that would reveal just how closely she had been watching Marcus Sterling's life, and why she had always believed their paths would cross when the time was right. Hope's first week in Marcus's penthouse was a study in contrasts. A streetwise 7-year-old learning to navigate a world of marble floors, smart home technology, and a refrigerator that was always full. Marcus had converted his home office into Hope's bedroom, complete with a princess bed, built-in bookshelves, and windows that offered a breathtaking view of Central Park. "It's like living in a castle in the clouds," Hope whispered on her third morning, standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows in her pajamas, watching the sun rise over the city she had once survived on the streets below. Marcus joined her with 2 cups of hot chocolate, a morning ritual he had never imagined himself enjoying. "Do you like it here, Hope? Really like it? Not just because you're grateful, but because it feels like home?" Hope considered this seriously, the way she approached all important questions. "I like being with you. The fancy stuff is nice, but what I really like is that you listen when I talk, and you don't get impatient when I ask questions, and you check on me at night to make sure I'm not having bad dreams." Dr. Sarah Martinez, Hope's trauma counselor, had explained that children who had experienced homelessness often struggled with feeling safe enough to sleep. Hope had spent so many months in survival mode that relaxation felt dangerous, like letting down her guard might mean waking up back on the streets. "Speaking of questions," Marcus said, settling into the window seat beside her, "I have something to tell you. The storage company called yesterday. They found a storage unit that your mother was renting. She had been paying for it automatically through her bank account even after she died." Hope's eyes widened. "Mama had a storage unit. But we never had enough stuff to store anywhere." "That's what I thought too. Would you like to go look at it together? We don't have to. We can wait until you feel ready." "I want to go," Hope said immediately. "Maybe there are pictures of us together, or her books. She loved books almost as much as she loved me." They drove to Queens that afternoon, to a storage facility that seemed worlds away from Manhattan's gleaming towers. The manager, a kind, elderly man named Mr. Patterson, led them to Unit 47B with gentle sympathy. "Your mother was a lovely woman," he told Hope as he unlocked the metal door. "Always polite, always paid on time. She said she was keeping some important things safe for her daughter." When the door rolled up, both Marcus and Hope gasped. The small unit was meticulously organized, like a carefully curated museum of memories. There were photo albums documenting Hope's entire life, from her first steps to her 7th birthday party. There were Hope's baby clothes, folded with care and preserved in clear containers. There were school projects and artwork, certificates from reading programs, and a dozen journals filled with Rachel's handwriting. But it was what lined the back wall that made Marcus's knees weak. Newspaper clippings about Sterling Industries, business magazine articles featuring Marcus, printed emails and company newsletters. Rachel had been collecting information about his company and his life for over 2 years. Hope found a letter addressed to her in her mother's handwriting, sealed in an envelope marked "For Hope when she finds her way home." With trembling fingers, she opened it and began to read aloud. "My precious Hope, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there to take care of you anymore, and it means you've found the man I always knew would be your guardian angel. Marcus Sterling works too hard and stays too late, but he has a good heart. I could tell by the way he left little thank you notes for the cleaning crew and never forgot to say please and thank you, even to people he never saw." Hope looked up at Marcus with wonder. "Mama wrote about you. Keep reading, sweetheart." I watched him for 2 years, Hope. I know that sounds strange, but I could see his character in the little things. He keeps pictures of his mother on his desk and touches them when he's thinking hard. He never throws away children's drawings that arrive in his mail. I've seen them carefully filed in his desk drawer. He donates money quietly, without wanting recognition. He's the kind of man who would move heaven and earth to protect a child if he knew that child needed protecting. Marcus felt tears rolling down his cheeks as Hope continued reading her mother's words, written by a woman who had been preparing for her own death by ensuring her daughter would find safety with a stranger who had unknowingly been auditioned for 2 years. "And Hope, my beautiful girl, I know you'll find him when the time is right, because some things are bigger than coincidence. Some things are love reaching across impossible distances to make sure the people who need each other find their way home." The letter was signed simply, "Forever your Mama, Rachel," with a postscript that made both of them cry. "Tell Marcus that the cleaning lady's daughter is finally safe, and thank him for being the kind of man worth trusting with the most precious thing in my world." The weeks that followed were a delicate dance of healing, learning and building trust between two people who had found each other across the vast landscape of human need. Marcus hired private tutors to help Hope catch up academically after months away from school. But what amazed everyone was how quickly she absorbed everything. She was hungry for knowledge, the way she had once been hungry for food. "She's exceptionally bright," reported Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the educational specialist who had been working with Hope. "Her mother clearly provided a strong foundation before she died. Hope reads at a 5th grade level despite missing so much school, and her mathematical reasoning is remarkable for a 7-year-old. Marcus watched Hope through the glass doors of his home office, where she sat at a small desk doing homework with an intensity that reminded him of himself at that age. She approached learning like someone who understood that education was a privilege, not a burden. "Marcus, Dr. Martinez, Hope's counselor, had called with an update after their weekly session. "I want to discuss something important with you. Hope is doing beautifully in terms of adjusting to her new life, but she's still carrying a tremendous amount of responsibility that isn't appropriate for a child her age." "What do you mean?" "She's constantly trying to earn her place in your life. She cleans compulsively, apologizes for taking up space, and asks permission for things that should be automatic rights, like eating when she's hungry or going to bed when she's tired. She's still in survival mode, and we need to help her understand that she doesn't have to earn love." That evening, Marcus found Hope in the kitchen at 6 a.m., attempting to make breakfast for both of them. She had managed to scramble eggs and toast bread, but the kitchen looked like a small explosion had occurred. "Hope, what are you doing, sweetheart?" Making you breakfast," she said proudly, presenting a plate that was both charming and slightly inedible. "I wanted to show you that I'm useful to have around." Marcus sat down and took a bite of the over-salted eggs, smiling as if they were the most delicious thing he had ever tasted. "Hope, can I tell you something important?" She nodded, suddenly worried by his serious tone. "I don't want you here because you're useful. I want you here because you're you. Even if you never cleaned another dish or made another meal, even if you just sat in that chair and breathed, you would still be the most valuable person in my life. But I have to contribute something. I have to earn—" "No." Marcus said gently but firmly. You don't have to earn anything. You belong here because I love you, not because of what you can do for me. Do you understand the difference? Hope's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to just be loved without doing something to deserve it. Then we'll learn together, Marcus said, pulling her into a hug that lasted until her tears stopped. Because I'm still learning too. I spent so many years thinking love had to be earned through achievement and success. You're teaching me that the best kind of love is the kind that exists just because two people choose each other. Later that week, Marcus made a decision that shocked his entire corporate team. He announced that he would be stepping back from day-to-day operations, appointing a CEO to handle routine business while he focused on what he called the most important merger of my life, becoming Hope's father. The business magazines called it career suicide. His board of directors questioned his judgment, but when Hope heard about his decision, she climbed into his lap and whispered, "Does this mean you'll be home when I get back from school?" "Every single day," Marcus promised, "even when I'm not perfect, even when I make mistakes or have bad days." "Especially then," Marcus said. "That's when family matters most." Hope was quiet for a moment, processing this revolutionary concept. "Marcus, do you think Mama knew you would choose me over your work?" Marcus looked at the photo of Rachel Matthews that now sat on his desk beside pictures of his own mother. Two women who had understood that love wasn't about what you could get, but about what you were willing to give. "I think, Hope, that your mama knew exactly who I could become if the right person needed me to be better than I was. But their peaceful adjustment period was about to be tested by an unexpected challenge. A woman claiming to be Rachel's estranged sister had contacted Child Services, demanding custody of Hope and questioning Marcus's motives for the adoption. The battle for Hope's future was just beginning, and Marcus was about to discover that some fights require more than money to win. They require a love strong enough to move legal mountains. The call came on a Tuesday morning, while Hope was at her first day of private school, looking adorable in her new uniform and backpack that was almost as big as she was. Marcus was reviewing quarterly reports when Margaret Chen's urgent voice crackled through his office phone. "Marcus, we have a problem. A woman named Linda Matthews Morrison has filed an emergency petition for custody of Hope. She claims to be Rachel's sister and says she has legal standing as the child's biological aunt." Marcus felt the world tilt sideways. "That's impossible." The background check showed Rachel had no living relatives. And Linda claims she and Rachel were estranged for years after a family dispute, but she says she's been looking for Hope since learning of Rachel's death. She's hired David Blackstone. He's one of the most aggressive family lawyers in the state, and he's already filed motions questioning your fitness as a guardian and suggesting that your wealth makes you an unsuitable parent for a child from Hope's background. What does that even mean? He's arguing that you're essentially buying a child to satisfy some emotional need, and that Hope would be better served in a modest, traditional family environment with a blood relative who understands her cultural and economic background. Marcus sank into his chair, his mind racing through the implications. "Margaret, I need you to investigate this woman immediately. Something doesn't feel right about this timing." "Already on it. I've hired the best private investigator in the city." "But Marcus, I need to prepare you. Family courts generally prefer blood relatives, especially when the adoptive parent is a single man with no previous child-rearing experience." That evening, Marcus sat Hope down for the most difficult conversation of their short time together. She listened with the serious expression she wore when processing important information, her small hands folded in her lap. "So this lady says she's Mama's sister?" Hope asked when Marcus finished explaining. "That's what she claims. Do you remember your mother ever mentioning a sister named Linda?" Hope shook her head slowly. "Mama always said she had no family except me." She said her parents died when she was young, and she never had any brothers or sisters. She said that's why it was so important for us to stick together, because we were each other's whole family. Hope, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest, even if you think it might hurt my feelings. If this woman really is your aunt, if she's your mother's sister, would you want to live with her instead of with me? Hope looked at Marcus with those impossibly blue eyes that seemed to see straight through to his soul. Marcus, Mama always told me that family isn't just about sharing blood. She said family is about people who choose to love each other and take care of each other no matter what. You chose me when you didn't have to. This lady, if she's really Mama's sister, where was she when Mama was sick? Where was she when I was living on the streets? Why is she only showing up now? Over the next week, as legal teams prepared for what promised to be a brutal custody battle, the private investigator uncovered disturbing information about Linda Matthews Morrison. She had a history of financial problems, 2 previous marriages that ended badly, and most damning of all, a pattern of pursuing legal settlements against wealthy individuals. She's done this before, Margaret reported during an emergency meeting. 3 years ago, she filed a slip-and-fall lawsuit against a department store that was settled out of court. Last year, she claimed a contractor damaged her property in a dispute that was also settled for undisclosed terms. Her current apartment is being foreclosed on, and she owes significant back taxes. So she's targeting me for money? It appears so. But proving that in court will be difficult, especially since she can claim she genuinely wants to care for her niece. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Hope, who had been quietly listening to the adults discuss her future, made a simple request that changed everything. "I want to see the pictures," she said during one of their strategy sessions. "What pictures, sweetheart?" Marcus asked. "If this lady is really Mama's sister, there should be pictures of them together, right? Mama kept pictures of everyone important in her life. She had photo albums going back to when she was little. If she had a sister, there would be pictures." Margaret Chen smiled. "Hope that's brilliant legal thinking. Margaret, we need to demand that Linda produce evidence of her relationship with Rachel, family photos, letters, anything that proves they were actually sisters." Shoot. When the demand was made, Linda's lawyer stalled for 3 days before admitting that his client had lost most family photos in a recent move. But Hope had given them the key to the truth. In Rachel's storage unit, among all the carefully preserved memories, there was a small photo album labeled Family History. It contained pictures of Rachel as a child with her grandparents, documentation of her parents' deaths when she was 16, and official records showing she had aged out of foster care with no siblings or extended family. Linda Matthews Morrison was not Rachel's sister. She was a stranger who had read about Hope's story in the newspaper coverage of the adoption and seen an opportunity to exploit a wealthy man's love for a child. The custody hearing lasted only 2 hours. When confronted with the evidence, Linda's lawyer withdrew the petition, and his client disappeared as quickly as she had appeared. Hope took the news with remarkable composure. "I'm glad she wasn't really Mama's sister," she told Marcus as they drove home from court. "Because if she was, it would mean Mama lied to me, and I know Mama never lied." "No," Marcus agreed. "Your Mama was always honest with you, even about the hard things. Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Always." "Were you scared you might lose me?" Marcus pulled the car over and turned to look at Hope's serious little face. "Terrified. Losing you would have been like losing the best part of myself that I didn't even know existed, until I found you." Hope unbuckled her seatbelt and climbed over to hug him. "You don't have to be scared anymore. We're family now, really and truly. Not because some judge says so, but because we choose each other every day." Christmas morning arrived with a gentle snowfall that transformed Manhattan into a winter wonderland, and Hope Matthews Sterling woke up in her beautiful bedroom, now officially hers forever, with the kind of excitement that only children can truly feel. The adoption had been finalized 3 days earlier, and Hope still carried her new birth certificate in her backpack like a treasured talisman. "Marcus, Marcus, it's Christmas and it's snowing, and I'm officially your daughter," she called, running down the hallway in pajamas covered with tiny reindeer. Marcus emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate, topped with whipped cream and cinnamon, his own excitement barely contained. "Merry Christmas, Hope Sterling. Are you ready to see what Santa brought?" The living room had been transformed into a Christmas fairy tale, with a 12-foot tree sparkling with lights and ornaments that Hope had helped choose, and presents wrapped in silver and gold paper arranged like a mountain of possibilities. But it was the small gift sitting alone on the coffee table that made Hope stop in her tracks. "What's that one?" she asked, pointing to a simple brown box with her name written in familiar handwriting. "That's from your mama," Marcus said softly. "I found it in the storage unit, hidden behind her journals. There was a note attached saying it was for your first Christmas in your new home." Hope approached the box with reverence, her small fingers tracing her mother's handwriting. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that smelled faintly of the perfume Rachel used to wear, was a small silver locket engraved with the words, "Hope and Mama, forever connected." "Open it," Marcus whispered. Inside the locket was a tiny photo of Rachel and Hope together, taken just months before Rachel's death, both of them laughing at something outside the camera's view. On the opposite side was an engraving, "Love never ends." "She knew," Hope whispered, fastening the locket around her neck. "She knew I'd have a new home for Christmas." They opened presents with the kind of joy that comes from shared love rather than expensive gifts. Hope's favorites were the art supplies and the books, while Marcus treasured the handmade card she had crafted with Dr. Martinez's help, a drawing of their family that included a small angel watching over them with Rachel's face. "Marcus," Hope said as they sat surrounded by wrapping paper and Christmas magic, "can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Of course, sweetheart." "The night I found you, when I was walking through that building looking for help, I kept hearing Mama's voice in my head telling me to go up one more floor, to try one more door. I thought I was just remembering things she used to say, but now I think maybe she was really there, helping me find you." Marcus felt chills run down his arms. "Hope, do you know what floor my office is on?" 42. "Why?" "The elevator in the building only goes to the 41st floor if you don't have a special key card. The 42nd floor is executive access only. How did you get up there?" Hope looked puzzled. "I took the stairs. But Marcus, the door at the top wasn't locked like the others. It was like someone had left it open just for me." Marcus made a mental note to check with building security about the access door, but part of him didn't want to know the logical explanation. Some mysteries were more beautiful than their solutions. That afternoon, they visited the cemetery where Rachel was buried, bringing fresh flowers and the Christmas cookies that Hope had insisted on baking. Hope knelt by the simple headstone and whispered a long conversation that Marcus couldn't hear, but when she stood up, her face was glowing with peace. "What did you tell her?" Marcus asked as they walked back to the car. "I told her about our house and my new school, and how you read me stories every night just like she used to. I told her about Dr. Martinez helping me not be scared anymore, and about how you changed your whole life just to make sure I felt safe. And I told her that I understand now why she always said hope was the most important thing, because hope led me to you." "What did she say back?" Hope smiled. "She said she's proud of both of us, and that love really never ends. It just changes shape. She said you're the answer to every prayer she ever prayed for me." That evening, as they decorated sugar cookies and watched classic Christmas movies, Hope curled up against Marcus on the sofa, and made an announcement that would stay with him forever. "Marcus, I know I call you Marcus because that's how we started, but would it be okay if I called you Dad sometimes? Not because I'm forgetting my mama, but because that's what you are now. You're my dad who chose me." Marcus felt tears sting his eyes. "Hope, there is nothing in this world I would rather be called than your dad." "Dad," Hope said, testing the word like a new flavor of ice cream. "Dad, will you promise me something? Anything. Promise me that even when I'm grown up and have my own family someday, we'll still have Christmas morning together. Promise me we'll always be each other's most important people." "I promise, Hope, forever and always." As snow continued to fall outside their warm home, Marcus Sterling realized that he had finally understood the difference between being successful and being truly wealthy. Success was about what you accumulated, but wealth was about what you gave away. And in giving Hope a family, he had received everything that truly mattered. But their story wasn't quite finished. There was still one more gift waiting to be discovered, one final surprise that would complete their journey from strangers to family in the most unexpected and beautiful way possible. 6 months later, Marcus and Hope were cleaning out the last boxes from Rachel's storage unit when Hope discovered something extraordinary. Hidden in a box of work uniforms was a manila envelope marked "For Marcus Sterling. Thank you." "Dad, this has your name on it," Hope said, holding up the envelope. Marcus opened it with trembling hands, finding a letter dated 2 weeks before Rachel's death. "Dear Mr. Sterling," he read aloud, "you don't know me, but I know you. For over 2 years, I have cleaned your office and watched you work late into the night. I have seen your character in the small kindnesses you show, the way you say thank you to people others don't notice, the way you keep photos of your mother close to remind you where you came from." Hope moved closer as Marcus continued reading. "I am writing this because I am dying, and my greatest fear is leaving my daughter Hope alone in a world that can be cruel to children with no protection. I've been watching you for 2 years, not as an employee watches a boss, but as a mother searches for someone worthy of her most precious treasure." Marcus's voice caught, and Hope took his hand. "I know this will sound impossible, but I believe God led me to your office so I could learn who you really are. I have seen you donate anonymously to children's charities. I have seen you keep every picture and letter that children send to your company. You are the kind of man who would move heaven and earth to protect a child if you knew that child needed protecting." "Dad," Hope whispered, "Mama really did choose you to be my daddy." Hope is extraordinary. She reads everything, asks amazing questions, and has a heart so pure she will change your life in ways you cannot imagine. She will make you remember what it means to love without conditions, what it means to be truly wealthy. Marcus wiped tears as he read the final paragraph. "I am including the key to my storage unit and a map of this building with your office marked. I've taught Hope about you without her knowing, stories about the kind man who works late in the beautiful office. When she has nowhere else to turn, she will find her way to you. Trust that some meetings are destiny disguised as coincidence." The letter was signed, "With all my gratitude and hope, Rachel Matthews, P.S. Tell Hope that Mama's love follows her everywhere, even to the 42nd floor." Marcus and Hope sat in silence as the magnitude of Rachel's plan became clear. She had spent 2 years preparing for her own death by ensuring her daughter would find safety with a stranger she had carefully chosen. "Dad," Hope said finally, "that night when I found you wasn't an accident. It was Mama's love reaching across the impossible to make sure I'd be safe. She turned you into my guardian angel before I even knew I needed one." Marcus looked at the detailed map Rachel had drawn, showing every route to his office, noting which nights he worked late and which cleaning crews had access. "Hope, Your mother spent 2 years making sure you would find me. She studied my character, my schedule, my heart. She prepared you for this journey without you knowing." "And it worked," Hope said with wonder. "Everything she planned worked perfectly." That evening, they visited the cemetery, bringing sunflowers and the adoption papers that made their family official. "Mama," Hope said, kneeling by the headstone, "I brought Dad to meet you properly. I wanted you to know he's everything you believed he would be. He kept his safe open that night because somehow he knew I was coming." As they drove home through Manhattan streets where Hope had once wandered alone, Marcus realized his story was no longer about a businessman rescuing a homeless child. It was about a mother's love so powerful it reached beyond death to orchestrate perfect salvation for her daughter and redemption for a man who had forgotten what really mattered. "Dad," Hope said, "do you think we'll ever stop being amazed by what Mama did?" "No, Hope. I think we'll spend our lives being grateful for a woman who loved you enough to move mountains." That night, as Marcus tucked Hope into bed, she made one final observation. "Dad, I used to think hope was just wishing for better things. But now I know hope is actually love working in ways we can't see, bringing the right people together at exactly the right time. Mama didn't just give me hope. She was hope." "Yes, she was," Marcus agreed, kissing her forehead. "And now you're my hope, every single day." As Hope drifted off to sleep wearing her mother's locket, Marcus marveled at the miracle that had brought them together. A homeless 7-year-old had asked for $1 and received a lifetime of love. A lonely billionaire had opened his safe and found something more valuable than all his wealth. Hope Matthews Sterling was home. Marcus Sterling was finally completely wealthy, and somewhere a mother's love continued to work miracles in the lives of the two people who meant everything to her. The little girl who asked for $1 had changed everything, forever.